Okay.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Bread of Life channel. I'm here with Luca today, and he's going to share his story of his spiritual journey, really starting as a Catholic and now being an atheist. So, welcome, Luca.
Welcome. It's a pleasure to be here. So it's the first time that I tell this story. So I'm a little bit nervous, but it's okay. So yeah, if you want, I can start.
Yeah, well, tell us a little bit about yourself first. And I also just want to add right now that Luca's actually going to be doing a debate on abiogenesis later this evening. So I'm posting the link. It's also in the description, but I'm putting it right now into the chat. So if any of you guys want to watch that debate later, Luca will be debating Tony Maurice. But Luca, will you tell us a bit about yourself before we hear about your
Yes.
story?
As you know, I'm an atheist for quite some time, as you will know. And I do have a degree in chemistry, just a bachelor, but I do have a degree in chemistry. And I started engaging in discussion with people on the net for I think a couple of years from now. Of course, I started on Kent's Oven channel, but he did block me. And then I translate to SFT. I have a very good relationship with that channel and the people there. So I started to engage in debates with Donny first and then other people. My first actual debate was with Owen, so it was quite a start. And that's more or less what I am right now. Yes, of course, there is more to me, but if someone want to ask me something, I will answer to any question. Nothing to hide, basically.
Thank you. Okay, well, why don't I forgot to put my cat out, so he might be he
Don't
might be
worry about
featured
it.
a few times. So, how about tell us about your spiritual journey?
Okay, it's a very long journey, and it starts in my middle school years, basically. I always was Catholic, and I think even a good one. I'm a really curious person, so I always read anything, always ask anything I can put my finger on. So yeah, I was very a faithful one. I think I had quite some degree of faith, and I can also add that I did have some very powerful experience even when I was a Catholic. I remember an instance, for example, where I did see a person. I will not tell who was that person, but I did see that person in my classroom. I was just a child, I think 7 or 8 years old, not more than that. And when I said that to my mother, she literally broke. She fell and started crying because it was a very important person, and she started crying. It's your guardian angel. It's a miracle, and so on and so forth. It was a very powerful experience. and I was just a child. It's not like I was doing drugs or anything like that. I was a child, 8 years old max. So yeah, I had quite some faith in God back then. And then what happened? The first things, I think that they were I did ask too much question, for sure. I remember one instance where I was in a event. Someone was talking about the flood and things like that, the Shroud of Turin. It was not a typical thing to do for my family. I cannot remember why we were there. Catholics are not that invested on these kind of things, so it was quite strange. But I remember that I was there with this speaker. We were in a house. It was a small event, and I started asking a lot of questions, like, okay, why I never studied about the flood in my history class? And everyone was like, okay, like shocked. So yeah, those were the first things, but it was not nearly enough to lose my faith over these things. It was also a strange occurrence, so it was not like Catholics are not bound to an young earth or things like that. So even with the evolution, things like that, no problem there. So it was not that experience to cause me whatever happened next. The problem started in my middle school years. I was very young, 11 to 13, 14 years old. And I was a very shy kid, basically a nerd. And in the 90s, to be a nerd was not a very good thing. Let's say that. So I live in a small city outside Milan, and people here are more ignorant. Milan, it's more like Europe. Here, it's a little bit different. It's like we live in the past. Let's say that. 10, 20 years in the past, more or less, in the culture, of course. So I was nerd, and there were bullies in my classroom. So it did not go nicely. You are a nerd, you are different, you read a lot, you don't do the same things that they do, you don't go after girls like they do, and people start talking, start saying things. It's a bit strange, that guy. Fine. Then some people start to say that I'm gay, and things start to go south. The culture back then, and it was just a problem of that age. It's not longer like that anymore. But back then, if you were gay, and I was not, but no way to disprove that. I was a shy guy, a nerd. No way that any girl would ever be with me. So it was quite tough to disprove these kind of things. And people started to mock me at first. That's fine. But I was not very well seen by the leader of these bullies. And it was for him a question about authority. I was not doing what he was doing, and he wanted to have followers. Everyone's do the same thing what I say. I was not like that. I was nerd, but I always had a very strong will. So it was not like, yeah, I will do whatever you want. Never. So never do like that. Okay, and they try basically to kill me. Yes, they send a gun. Basically, it was very young, but they equipped um, a fellow student with a knife, and they try to basically send this guy after me.
Wow.
Yes. And then they made me fall down the stairs another time, and they try to cut off my head with a window another time. So
Okay, they tried, but did they like actually cut you?
with the knife, I did not stay to find out. I just fled.
But
You
the
know,
window,
when
did
someone
they?
brings a knife and try to stab you, I think you will not stay there. I just fled.
But
With
and with the window, did you?
the window, I just they try to get my head under the window, was closing in this way. So I just fight for my life, and I managed to avoid the window, and then they just started to kick me in the gut. And
Oh
then the
gosh.
professor arrived. So yeah, it was
So
quite
sorry.
brutal. Um, they were not kidding, those guys. They were quite young, but they were quite bad. Some of these guys did end up in prison, not for whatever they done to me, but they eventually find out their way to prison. So they were very, very, very bad. It's not like they were joking or anything else. The problem was, it's not something like that that can lead, at least not for me, that can lead to lose your faith. But at that point, I had some doubts. It were not because whatever was happening to me. I was not like, okay, I need to pray to solve this thing. I never thought of that. I was not important enough to require God's intervention. So it was not for that. But my thoughts were, okay, something does not add up for me back then. Okay. And I went to a priest. I was, I think, 13 years old or 14 years old. I was very young. And I went to this priest and said to him, okay, I have some doubt. I cannot remember every points because it was quite some time ago. I remember only 2 points. The first one was about LGBT plus problem. And back then there was not even LGBTQ plus thing. It was okay, gays, homosexual, and etc. And even worse terms. Culture back then was very, very unforgiving to those people, at least where I lived. So my point was, okay, let alone that I'm not gay and they are trying to basically kill me because I am for them. I cannot agree with the church on this point, and I have to confess that back then I was basically an homophobe. I was too young to be actually one, but the culture was very unforgiving. To be homosexual was something perceived as wrong. It was normal to mock, even ruffle up those people. It was considered basically normal. And I said to that priest, even if I say that that's wrong, to be homosexual is wrong, I cannot agree with your take on the subject, because people are getting this wrong. People is getting attacked over it. So you need to change your position, because even if you say attack the sin and not the sinner, if you are doing something or you are believed to have done something, you will be treated differently. You will find people that will do worse, and that's a problem. You are leading those people. You are a priest. You have a very big community under you, and it's very important to tell those kind of things to people, because people are getting hurt over this. And that's what was one point. My other point was all about women, because in the church back then, but even now, Catholic Church, at least, it was not a fair thing. Women were under men. Men can be priest, can be bishop, can be pope. Women cannot. And I was not okay with this. We are the same. Okay, we are different, but not our brain. Women are smart as me and you and every male, basically. So we cannot we cannot avoid to have women in those positions. It's nonsense for me. And in that moment happened, because that guy was a very young priest. And when I said this thing to him, he just looked at me and said, yeah, you cannot say those things, because if you will create your own version of fate. And I was only a 13, 14-year-old guy. And I just said to him, okay, why it's wrong? If I think that you are wrong, you need to show to me that I'm wrong. If you don't, I just leave. And he just stood there speechless. And in that moment, I got that he was just a man. He was not. In the Catholic Church, I don't know if you are familiar with the Catholic Mass, the whole culture.
Yeah, I've been to Mass. Yeah, I've been to I've been to Mass quite a bit.
Okay, but
Yeah.
in Italy, there when you go to these very old churches, very dark places, most of the time, with all people there. Priests are not just messengers, are the middlemen between you and God. And the rituals, everything, it's a very strange experience. You are with your congregation. My city has tens of thousands of people. We are quite a big city, not as big as Milan, but we are talking about a very big congregation of people. So you are in this building full of people chanting and praying, uh, almost in the dark, because it's a very old building. It's the feeling, it's sacred, it's something special. They can get to feel you that. When you look at someone like him, that's a middleman between you and God, and you get that he has no clue. It was just a snap. I just left the church, the building, but not only the building. And I was very young, but was just the start, because when you do something like that, first of all, you will find the fear, because hell, you will go to hell. You just left the church. Everyone is in the church. Every relative is in the church. I have some very hardcore my father's aunt is an ex-nun, so some people in my family are very into it. So yeah, first of all, you experience fear, a lot of fear. What I will do, it's not like you just stop to believe in God. My first thoughts were, okay, the Catholic Church is wrong. God is real. I will go to hell no matter what I will do, what it will happen. You have a lot of fear in that moment. The good thing is, in Italy, people does not have that strong attachment to church. So when you leave, people just does not care. I'm gone from a couple of decades. No one ever saw me again, and no one said anything, basically.
Wow. What about your family?
My family, when in Italy, it's not like, because everyone is a Catholic. When you say I'm no longer a Catholic, it's like, what? Everyone is. So it's not. My mother just stood there and said to me, okay, it's just a phase. You are young. You want to have fun. To me, I was a nerd. No fun. No people, no, almost no friends. But people, the first things they thought was, yes, you are young, you no longer want to go to the mass every Sunday. And so it was like that. Oh, okay, you are young, it's just a phase. They do not react to it. It's strange because in Italy, literally everyone is a Catholic, but most people are not very into the faith. So everyone is, but no one really cares. Of course, elderly people, people like that, we do have a lot of very faithful person. The aunt, my father's aunt, it's a very faithful woman. He spent all his life to try to ease suffering. He was a nun and a nurse, and she is still working to this day, well over his 80s. But when someone dies, is very ill, a nun, old nuns, their colleagues basically, is very sick, is dying, she is still there to help them. It's that kind of person. When you
Wow.
start to help people to that degree, you cannot stop. And he is very into the faith and into helping people. So it's not like everyone in Italy has no faith or a very bland version of faith. But a good portion of the people are just there every Sunday when they go. A lot of more people just go to the mass at Christmas and Easter, things like that. So when you leave, it's not that no one will come for you. So
Now,
I just left.
go ahead. Sorry.
And no one came after me. Please ask me away. It's not like the story is over, because at this point
Yeah.
of the story, I'm still a believer.
That's what I was going to ask you. At that point, you still believed in God. You just thought
Yes.
because you left the church, you were going to hell. So,
Yes.
and then, so what happened as you wrestled with that?
You know, when you live in Italy, it's very hard to find an other version of the Christian faith. Most of people are just Catholic. So they do exist different version of the church, but it's very hard to contact them. Back then, even more. It's not like in the 90s you can just go and find a church. Where you go, where you call. I was just an underage boy. Impossible to do so. Maybe not impossible, but very, very hard. It's not like that I had internet. So what do you do? People now cannot, younger people cannot understand these things, but back then, you just to go to another place, you need a map. That's not as easy to use your cell phone to go somewhere. So now you just pick up your phone and put the navigation on and just go. Back then, you need a map. Map can be wrong because they print a map every year max, and maybe you have an older one, 5, 4, 6, 10 years old map. Something can change during that time. So back then to move was an adventure. Basically, it's not like a 14-year-old boy could just find another
Right.
church, in Italy in the 90s. Almost impossible. So I did rest for quite some time. Another big event in my high school years was the sex and the crimes in the Vatican thing. Sex Crimes and the Vatican was the documentary. It was a huge blow to my faith. That thing was disgusting. And back then, was almost impossible to get your finger on any evidence, because in Italy, information back then was very controlled. I got a lot of information about that kind of thing in the late 2000s, because I traveled outside my country. But back then was almost impossible to get information about that thing. Yeah, and it was quite a blow. But years are passed quite a lot, and I'm in the limbo. I'm a believer, but I do not go to the church. I do not have not a. I do have maybe faith, but no mass, no rituals, nothing. Maybe I pray, but very scarcely, because I have no one. I'm alone, basically.
And at that time when you prayed, did you think God was mad at you because you wouldn't go to church? Because it sounds like you left the church under moral conviction, like you felt like it was the right thing to do to leave the church. But did you have this like feeling in your mind that God was mad about you doing that?
It was quite a strange thing. When you leave your faith, the first months, the first year to couple of years, you have a lot of fear, because back your entire life was around that faith. So it's a huge blow for everyone. So you have a lot of fear, and of course you do experience things like that. But more you grow, more you stay away from that, from the church, from everything, and more you will start to think about this thing less. It's not like I was not thinking about these things anymore, because God, religion was a part of my life, and it was quite an important one. So yeah, but you will start to think about these things less. And then something happened. And it was quite funny. Some friends of mine got into basically a cult. Kabbalah. It's they call it a philosophy from Israel. They are basically Hebrews, but it's a strange current of that religion. Kabbalah, it's a very strange thing. So some of my friends I did got at that time, and we were I think maybe at the end of my high school years, so after the sex crimes and the Vatican thing. I was quite a skeptic at that point, because you left from some time, nothing happened, and then you know about these horrible things made by priests. So for someone that grew up with my background, priest, and not only priests, because the Pope of back then was into it too. Ratzinger was into it. Basically, he helped some of the priests to escape. So it was a huge thing back then. And yeah, if he is not Pope right now, I think it's because of that. I don't know if you know, but Ratzinger is still alive. We have two popes right now. So yeah, it
I
was.
thought that he resigned the position, right?
Yes, he did, but it's still around. It's called Pope Emeritus. So he is no longer the Pope, but is still inside the church. And yes, it was quite a huge thing back then.
Yeah, I can imagine that if you're someone who really, you weren't just taught that the priest and the Pope and these people are just like, ministers, but they were like really supposed to be holy, like extra holy men.
Well,
right?
the Pope inside the Catholic Church is basically, if he's speaking about the doctrine, is right because he is speaking for God. It's that important, the Pope.
Yeah.
So a Pope with a background of saving not very good priest, let's say that, we can say worse, much worse. It's a huge thing.
Yeah.
A very huge thing. Because if you think about it, even if those people are completely wrong, and I think they are, I'm no longer a believer in anything. So, but the Catholic Church is bad. I don't think anyone without a bias can say otherwise. But they are speaking in the name of God, and they are still there. It's a huge thing, because if there is God, those people are there using his name to do pretty much very, very, very bad things. So
Yeah.
it's a huge
So back
thing.
to Kabbalah.
Yes. In that, some of my friends got involved in Kabbalah. And back then, I did not have almost no friends, basically. All of my friends were into that. And I went with them at some events in Rome. It was quite a trip to go from here to Rome. Yeah, we go to these events, and here I find, well, it was very interesting because I got in contact with people from Israel. Some of my friends got their wedding rings in Israel. We did have quite some connection with those people. So it was really, really interesting to see what was their culture, their idea of God. They were a part of what I consider a cult. So it's not like everyone there believed the same, but they did have some peculiar belief in God. So it was very, very interesting. And I can remember as yesterday that I met a guy there, and it was at these events, and he did convert to Catholics, to whatever that is, after he almost died. He was in the military, and he was in the bomb squad, and a bomb blew up to his face. He showed me all of his scars, all over his arms and legs. He was basically dead. When a bomb blows up to your face, it's not like you can survive that. He did, and it was almost, let's say, a miracle, because it's very, very unlikely to survive something like that. And when he woke up, he converted to Kabbalah. Now, I was a skeptic already when I went to some events, and then I bailed out because I did recognize the science of a cult. They were trying to get me in, to give me a job in the religion. They were trying to get me to depend from them. And I was not, when you start to be a skeptic, it's not like you will fall for something like that. So it was clear to me that was a cult. But that guy, it was quite an experience for me, because that guy was all at the doorstep of death. He was a good guy. The last thing he did, he was to say to his colleagues, just say to my relatives, my parents, that I love them, when he was hit by the blast. He was quite a good guy. He almost died. And
now, why did he convert to Kabbalah? Like, how did he connect the bomb to that?
I think that when he survived, for what he told me, he was exposed to that religion, and it's not. He said to me that he had an experience, an OBA basically, an experience of almost death, and that converted him. That he said to me that he saw God or something like that, and he told him that it was all wrong. And then he found Kabbalah and he joined. So my problem there is that guy almost died, and it was not a lie. I've seen the scars of the bomb. It was covering in it. It was really, really bad. It was not a lie. And even though he almost died, he had a vision, but he did end up in a cult, because it was a cult.
So how did you move on from that?
Oh, that was easy. As soon I realized that that was a cult, I was out. Yeah, you want me to work for you? The women, same thing. Women, males are the one that are important. Women are for just marriage and to support men. And
Mm,
I was already over back then when
yeah.
I saw those kind of things. I just
Hmm.
very interesting to know about their vision of God. Someone told me that Christian basically stole their book because for them the Torah, it's their book, it's their story of their
Hmm.
people, and it was a very good experience. I'm very happy to have that. Uh, it was fun, but I bail out almost immediately. The most important thing was that guy, because for me,
Hmm.
someone so close to death, a good guy, he was not.
Yeah.
He was a very good person. I could tell. He almost died. He had nothing to lose at that moment, and he had a vision, and he ended up in a cult. At that
Mm,
point, you start wondering if people like that can have revelation. And
mm,
I did have some back then in my
right.
Catholic years, and end up in basically a cult. It was obvious. It was wrong. Everyone not biased could tell it.
Yeah.
So
So
how
that
it
was frustrating. You're like, how can I trust if I like he had this revelation and ended up in a bad place? Why should I
very
trust
bad
my
place. It
revelation or
was a
anybody
cult.
else's? Hmm.
It was like you will work for us and you will give to us 10% of your salary. Yeah, sure. Count on it. Bye. Insane for me. My friends stayed a little bit longer. My
Hmm.
Some of my friends are married thanks to that, because in that religion it's like if you have a girlfriend, you need to marry her as fast as possible. So my uh, I have a couple of friends that they are married because of that cult. They are still married and they are out, but it's fun to think about it. They are married because they went to some events with the Kabbalah. They also went to Israel. It,
So, so
yes.
now you at that point you were you still believing in God at that point?
At that point, it was still atheist, but the God of the Bible, it was not longer. I was not longer there, so I started to look elsewhere, and I did get somewhere. I did get into Wicca. You know about Wicca?
Wow, this is a story. I mean, this is okay. I can't wait. This is really good.
Yeah, it
Okay.
was like, you are around people still in the Kabbalah, like, well, you are not coming back because I'm not stupid. You can give those people 10% of your incomings. I will not. Have fun.
But how did you get involved with Wicca?
Yeah, I was telling you that. So I did laugh and I was just living. And back then it was, what was the name of that program? Now we have WhatsApp. Back then we had, what was that program? It was on the computer to chat with people.
Like Google Hangouts or something? I don't
No, no,
know,
no, no,
because
no.
I
It's
didn't use any of those.
much,
Okay.
much older than that.
Okay. I don't know.
It was on the PC, and you could send those very loud sounds to your fellow participants of the chat. I cannot remember, but there was that program, and I was chatting with people. And back then, even though it was not like now it's much more easy to make friends online. But back then, people maybe left their contacts on forums or places like that. And so I started to chat with some people in Sicily, a girl, and then some of his friends. And you start talking. I was very interested in OBA, story of ghosts, paranormal in general, and she was very interested too. And she was a Wiccan. So one things lead to another. It's not like we were together or anything, just friends. And back then I was single. I was working, so I did have quite some money, not much, but enough to travel. And I went with those people summer in Sicily. They did bring me on that thing, the Wicca thing. So I was a Wiccan for quite some time. And I have to tell you that I've seen very, very strange things during that period. Those guys, they went very, very close, if not getting there, to show me something that I could not explain. I can just tell you that I always had a particular dream. It was very, very specific about a figure with some characteristics. And one of these girls just told me what I was dreaming. And it was very, very specific. If you need to, I can even explain a little bit more, because I don't think it's too personal to do so.
Sure.
I always dreamed, but it went back some years, about this figure. It was a skeleton. And every time I saw that figure, it was, time to time, it was bursting into flames, blue flames. And that girl once told me I saw a burning skeleton, and it was burning in a bright blue flame. And you were there. That's powerful. So I never told her about that thing. It was quite powerful for me. So I did my fair share of experience with that fate, and it was quite I'm still in contact with those people, even though I'm not a Wiccan, and I don't think I was ever one. I just hang out with those people for some time. And yes, I've
But how
seen.
do you think of that now? Like you said, you saw some things, you experienced that.
I think
You know.
that
Mhm.
it's all on my mind. That particular thing I cannot explain fully, but it's really impossible. Maybe I said something to her and I just don't remember it. It's possible. Uh, it's not like you can say it's real. It's not something you can do it again. It was impressive, but I how can I be so sure that I did not just told her? Maybe I just forgot.
Mm.
Maybe there is something, but it does not lead to their fate for me. But
Mhm.
even if we add something, first of all, we don't know. We did talk a lot back then, so
You
it's
did
possible.
what? Coke a lot?
Talk about
Talk.
a lot
Mhm.
with messages, some call, video call, of course. We were friends back then. We still are, but I do not engage with her so much now. But not because I have a bad relationship with her, just that you start to grow, you start to have a boyfriend, to go to work, and
Mhm.
you will lose some friends along the way, but not because you do something, just life. So yeah, it was very powerful. I cannot exclude the possibility that something happened, but I'm a skeptic. It's possible that I just told her, or that in our conversation I let uh, her know something. Maybe it was not even intentional, but I
Mm.
cannot say, okay, it was real. She did it. It was really a witch. It's not like that. I think you can get to an explanation. It was interesting, and still think it is, but I don't think it was real, even though I did have some very weird experience, because when you do meditate, I did the out of body experience thing, so I have my fair share of experience. But if you ask me now, I will tell you that it's not impossible to think that something supernatural exists. But right now, I don't think that I have this proof, because if you want proof, you need to do it again and again and be able to test
Mm.
it. I cannot tell you that it was not my brain or I just forgot something. It's possible. We were talking a lot back then, so how do I know? Maybe I said something to her. Maybe he was also forgetting this, and it was not intentional. It was just in the back of her mind.
Mm.
He had a dream about it. Possible.
But you said you also had out of body experiences. Like, were you
Yes.
doing astral projection or what?
Yes.
What? Mhm.
I was very curious kid, so I did went to. I did try those experience just to know what was like to do so. It was really interesting to have those kind of experience. But if you ask me, I don't think that's anything more than your brain. I did have during my life quite a lot of strange experience, but that was from when I was 4 years old.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's possible, but to be fair, it's not like, if those experiences are true, the God of the Bible has nothing to do with them. Yeah, it contradicts quite a lot, because on this experience, I did dream about basically the future. I saw someone die on those dreams, and it really happened twice.
Now, why do you say that has nothing to do with the God of the Bible, all that and your other experiences? How would it contradict?
Because, first of all, I don't think that those were real, and I cannot find any. First of all, what I saw was not in line with the Bible.
What do you mean?
I saw entities and spoke with those things. And
I didn't understand the word you said. I saw.
entities.
What's anti?
Creature.
A what?
Smaller gods. Call whatever you want. I think to you will be demons.
Oh, okay, okay.
And no, I don't think that adds up with the Bible, if you ask me. And I do not think to this day those experiences were true. And also, if they were real, does it mean that I can predict the future? And why? It's not like I did have a vision and it was able to do anything about it. I had a vision and the person died. It was just a cruel thing. I think, if you ask me, that I'm very somewhat smart. You can say that. So I just think that was my brain thinking about some things and just coming to a conclusion. It was not impossible. One time was a very old person, so yeah, we were expecting that. I can say that I saw a little bit too much to be just that, because she died she did not die there, but she fall and it furniture with his head and stood there for quite some time in a pool of blood, and that's what I saw. Did they I saw women in a pool of blood, and the day after, that person had that episode, and she died 3 weeks after that. But he was basically dead at that day, because our Earth just broke in 2 pieces. So she was still alive, but she was doomed that day.
Wow.
And yes, and also I saw a thing about a guy that died, an accident. It was a boy, and I was still very young. Also, another episode was when I was 4 years old, and I had this dream, and I was 4 years old, but I still remember that dream like yesterday. I saw a shop. I was in a shop. It was all white everywhere, and they were those people behind where you put the. It was meat. There was a lot of meat, but and people behind that putting that meat on display. And I saw this guy, very young guy, smiling at me, and he was pointing at something. And when I looked at it, it was a liver, a human liver. And the day after, the cousin of my father died of cancer, liver cancer.
And you didn't know your dad had liver cancer before
No,
that?
my dad is fine. His cousin died.
Oh, your dad's cousin. But did you know about the liver cancer before you saw
Nope.
that dream?
I was 4 years old.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yes.
Well, you might not believe your experiences are real, but I do.
Maybe, but I'm not convinced if you ask me. Yes,
Yeah.
they are quite strange, and I can give you that. But to me, those things do not point to a god, and even if they do, I think that would be a very awful god.
Mm.
But I want to be clear, I'm an atheist. I do
Yeah.
not have any ill intent towards God on anything. I do not believe in a God, so it's not like I have anything against God because I don't believe in a God.
Well, Luca, how did you get to that point? Because so far you were, still believing in God after you left the Catholic Church. You left Kabbalah, but you didn't say anything about not believing in God. The experience with Wicca, is that like, where did you start saying, okay, there's no God?
Because I start to see a pattern. All those people of different faiths, they all were convinced about their gods, all of them. And so,
Yeah.
how can you tell that your faith is the true faith? At the point, and I'm still there, I can just say that was just my brain. And everything you can see, it's your mind doing trick to you. I'm not convinced of the existence of God. It's very important because a lot of person maybe can think that maybe I'm mad at God for what happened to me or things like that. No, I don't even think about it because when you start to not believe, it's over. There is no God. It's not like you can give the fault to anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And if you believe in God, you can say, He sent those things to me. Why is that? And you can have some comfort in it, because you can say, well, maybe is doing that for a reason. There is a reason behind that. When you start to lose faith entirely, you will no longer have that. So it's not like you can say, I have those things because there is a reason behind it. No, it's my brain doing trick to me. And I'm pretty convinced about that, because I've seen a lot of people of different faith, all very, very convinced about their faith.
Mm-hmm.
And if there is a God, why is he tricking those people? Because that guy almost died and he was convinced about his faith. And it was wrong about it. I'm sure about that. Those girls, they were pretty convinced too. And they were very good people, trying to help people, doing good. And they believe in something that I find now absurd. And I was fine. I was not pretty convinced back then too, because ancient gods, Zeus, and so on and so forth. It's too much for me. Sorry. The God of the Bible. Sorry, I'm not convinced at all. When I read the Bible, and you know it because we talk about that, I'm not convinced. I find a good portion of these stories very, very hard to believe. And when I read some of those, I even giggle, because if you read that book as a normal book, I think that a lot of things are pretty funny, in a tragic way, maybe, because the Bible is not a very light book. But if you have a good sense of dark humor, you will find some of the things in the Bible funny, I think. It's not to mock God, but if you read certain stories and you are not convinced, so you are not a believer, and you look at them as just stories, I think you will find some of those funny too, because some are pretty, how can I, peculiar, strange. To me, are not even consistent. I talk about that, talked about that in your channel before. So when you start to see that all people, religious people, are convinced about their beliefs, and I've been through a lot Christian faith, of course, not all version of it, but I do not think that at the base level it's that different. Of course, there are things that are different, and I know them, but the core beliefs pretty much are the same. And then you go to see something like the Kabbalah with a completely different view of the God of the Bible. For them, it's their God. Full stop. It's their story, it's their God. And then you start to experience other kind of faiths, polytheist faiths. Wicca is very free as religion. You have to experience and believe what you experience. So it's not like they have priests and things like that. So I experienced quite a wide range of religions. Not every religion, of course, but and every religion, those people were convinced.
Yeah.
They had some kind of experience. And if there is one God and you have those very powerful experience, why those experience do not point to the same God? And when you start asking that, you realize that you cannot have proof, evidence in a constant way. It's not like that you have a religion and you will have more proof than any other. No. All people are convinced more or less the same. If you ask someone, a Muslim, they are pretty much very faithful, much more than Catholics, if you ask me. They are more than willing to lose their lives. Not everyone, of course, but we do know that, especially in places where war is common, people are much, much poorer than we are. As Italy, it's a pretty wealthy state. So, but where people are desperate, they have a lot of faith, and they can do almost anything for their faith, and does apply to Muslim, Catholic, Christian in general, even to those religions that are completely different. Just look at Japanese. They are Shintoist, completely different thing. Where they get that, or Hindus are completely off the charts, and they have a very strong faith. And when you start to really realize that, because if you just experience your religion, you can think that others are just being deceived, they are wrong. But when you are inside those things and you realize that those people do believe, they are honest about it.
Yeah. Well,
Then
I mean,
you say, okay, so how can you tell there is something at all? And my answer is, there is not. If there is a God, it's a God that it does not intervene. So
well,
there
Luca,
is
you and I
there is
are, go ahead.
no change at all for me.
Well, you and I have, I mean, I've also experienced people of other faiths, and I'm coming away with a much different interpretation than you are. I mean,
But
I
you
don't
were
doubt,
not inside the faith. That's the difference.
but I mean, I don't dismiss the experience of your Wiccan friends. I believe their experiences, you know.
Okay, so how can you
So
explain them? Because
yeah.
if they are real,
Mm-hmm.
either God cannot stop those experience and those people are tricked and he
Mm-hmm.
cannot do anything about it, or he is permitting that.
Yeah.
To your point, to my point, there is no God, so no one has a fault in this. It's just humans doing human stuff. And
Right.
if there is something, I think that's just something that we cannot understand, and we maybe have other means to communicate than just what we can experience. Our brain are very, very powerful. So, and we are pretty good at imagining things. So for me, those experiences were just my brain doing trick to me. Maybe I was very young. Maybe I just heard my father talking about his cousin. Is possible. I was very little, so my memory it's not perfect back then. 4 years old. How much you can tell about your life back then? Next experience, it was possible that I just the one with the boy, maybe it's just a coincidence. It's possible. The one with the person dying, she was very old. It was not the first episode. It was the last one and the most grave one, of course, but it was not the first. So maybe my brain just processing things in my subconscious. I cannot be sure of that. With the girl, yeah, I told you that I never told those stories to her, but it's not impossible that I just forgot about it. Or maybe I just say something not that had led to those things. Maybe it was not a direct thing, maybe a thing there, and our brain can and do those stuff. Maybe you can understand much more than people is telling you from just his appearance, his way to move. We are complex. So to me, those experience, even though they are pretty impressive, I can tell you that they do not lead to any kind of God. If a God exists, to me, for what I can tell, it's a God, at most a watchmaker, someone that started things and just let them go from there. And that's my honest opinion. How did I lose my faith? It was a gradual thing, because it was like, yes, God is real and I'm a Catholic. Then, no longer a Catholic. God is real. And then you start to talk with people from Israel, and they say, okay, that's our God, our story. And so you are, okay, not very into that anymore. But there is something, yes, so let's find out. And you start looking into it, and you end up in very strange places, like the Wiccan thing. And after that, you are not convinced even of that. And you say, okay, I'm done. And that was my story. It was a thing over, I think, a decade or something more. It's not like you woke up a morning and you are no longer a believer.
Yeah.
Because you have nothing to gain. Because it's not like, yeah, I want to sin. It's not like that. Because if you want to sin, you just need to ask forgiveness after that. I was a believer. I saw what some of my fellow believers did. I was not one of them, because I was a nerd. No one would be interested in me, but
Hmm.
I saw what believers can do, and when someone tell you, yeah, you do that because you want to sin, no, absolutely not. You will just gain a lot of fear when you leave the religion.
Hmm.
Uh, you will be an outcast, in my case in particular, because everyone is a Catholic in Italy. You will gain nothing. Even if you say something bad happens to me, if you believe in a God, you can be mad at him or ask him why you are doing this. There is a reason for this. When you no longer believe, you no longer believe. It's
Hmm.
no longer the fault of a God. When someone says atheists just hate God, it's nonsense. I don't believe in a God. I cannot be angry at him. And
Luca, Randy had this question for you. Do you, because earlier you mentioned when you first left the faith, you still struggled with the fear of hell. Do you still struggle with that now?
no, as I said, once, and it was a very long process, but once you no longer believe in the God of the Bible, you will no longer be in fear of hell, because if you don't believe in it, you cannot be afraid of it. You have seen how I talk about the Bible. I'm a very respectful. I do not want to offend anyone, so I'm very respectful. I try to be, at least, but I do not really care because I do not longer believe. To me, the Bible is just a story, so you cannot be afraid of it. It's very
Who do you,
important. No, no, no. Just think about it. You did see a lot of debates with atheists, I think, no? Have you ever looked in those people's eyes when someone like Ovid tells them, okay, you will go to hell? No one cares. Because if you are not a believer, you will not be afraid. And if you are just lying about it, you will betray yourself at the point. Because if you are a believer, you are afraid of hell a lot. I was one, and I know. When you are no longer a believer, someone can tell you you will go to hell and you will not care. And that's the sign that you are not lying and you are an atheist.
Luca, who do you think Jesus is?
I think he was a person. He died. I think he was a preacher. And I think he was not what we think of him now, because I think that his message was quite redacted along the way. So it was all about his people, not about us. And I think he was not very peaceful as we think of him right now. I think that the passage about the Gehenna, when he said, uh, the people that will rise or will not follow me will be in the Gehenna, is translated with hell. But the Gehenna was the dumpster fire, basically, outside Jerusalem. He was telling his people, basically, who is not with me, he will burn with the trash. And I don't think he was. I think it was somewhat justified, because Romans were not very nice people, so he was trying to free his people. So I do not think it was bad, but I also think that we do not know a lot about Christ, because what we know comes from much later documents. So I think he will not agree with us about, I think, almost anything.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your spiritual journey.
It was a pleasure. If you want to say something, I was not prepared, like I did not have a structure. I was free. I was free to say anything it was on my mind.
Yeah.
So I was not here prepared to say anything or give a message. I was just here to chat.
Yeah, definitely. It's great. I mean, I really enjoyed hearing your story. It was, kind of a different deconversion story than I'm used to hearing. And
Yeah, I think that all the conversion stories are different, because to me it
yeah.
was experience after experience, and when you experience too many version of theism, I think that you will learn to question the whole thing, like I did. Even though I did have some very powerful experience back then, I
And
was
I
beginning to have seen a literal angel. So yeah.
and I think that's a good lesson. By the way, you're frozen. I don't know if you're
No,
trying
no,
to say
no.
something. So I think that's a good, I hope that the people watching will kind of take your story as a lesson. I hear a lot of people say that if they just had an experience with God, if they just experienced a miracle, if something supernatural happened, then they would believe. But I really don't think that's true. I think a lot of people, I mean, you know, miracles do not necessarily produce faith in people. And I mean, did you want to jump in there?
Yes, because there is a difference. Because if you want to deconvert an atheist, you need proof, and what happened to me was not, because you can see anything, experience anything. The important thing is to be able to do it again. Let's take, for example, any fantasy settings. Uh, there is a god, you pray to that god, and a miracle will happen, and it will be constant. I can pray and produce an effect. The real world is not like that. And if you want to give evidence, you need to reproduce it. It does not matter my experience, because experience are personal. I cannot prove it to you, even
Mm-hmm.
if I want to.
Mm-hmm.
So a real miracle will be something that you can show to be true.
Hmm.
To
I
me,
think there are quite a lot of, you know, well substantiated miracles. And yet, most of the time, people who like don't believe are not going to believe those miracles, even if there's medical documents and, it's, I don't know. In my experience, people who don't want to believe just won't believe, even when they are faced with evidence.
just let's think about it. It's not like that we are the only one to have miracles, because strange things happen everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
If a religion is true, you would see a difference. Christians have a statistic, all other no. And I do not think you can demonstrate that. There is no things like that.
Well,
I think people will experience strange things. It's possible that something exists. I said that more times over. I cannot disprove the existence of a God. I do not believe in it, but I think it's impossible to show that a God does not exist. But if you want to show that a particular God is real, you need to show a difference in statistics. Like, I can pray and heal people, or our people are more surviving more, living more, something like that. And I don't think you can show that.
Well, I wanted to respond, you earlier said, like, if there is a God, then he either allowed people to have he just let people have all these spiritual experiences, and he didn't like kind of intervene and tell them the truth or point them in the right direction, like, the guy who had the experience and, with the bomb and everything. But like for me, I see all those experiences. I believe them because I believe in a supernatural realm. I believe in a spiritual realm. I believe that there is power in Wicca. I don't practice Wicca because I think it's tapping into the wrong source, like a source of power that's not good for humans to tap into. So, but I believe in spiritual beings. I believe in, the gods that are being worshipped by Hindus. I don't think that Hindus are just making this stuff up. I believe that there are real entities that are vying for human worship. And so, I wouldn't deny that those entities existed, even in, the God, the commandment says, have no other gods before me, right? Like, don't bow down to any other gods. God didn't say, hey, these entities aren't, he did say they're not him, but it doesn't mean that they don't have power. So in my worldview, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on in the spirit realm. And so I don't have to deny other people's experiences in order to believe what I believe.
So, in your view, Yahweh is just one God in a multitude of gods? Because if he is the only God, it's permitting those entities to influence others. And I want to be really clear about that. It's not what I believe. I'm reasoning in a theistic perspective. But for me, simply, there are no gods.
Right.
But if you think that God is real, it's either permitting those entities to influence others,
Yeah,
to basically ruins lives. Those people will go to hell, but they are trying to do good. So why?
Well, first of all, I don't believe that people are going to burn in hell forever. I believe that hell, as mentioned by Jesus, is the Valley of Hinnom, which is a place of judgment. So I have to say first off that I don't believe people are going to be burning in hell forever. But do I believe God permits other beings to influence us? Yes, I do. And do I believe that those entities that are called gods are actually, compared to God the creator? No. So I think there is one creator of all things, and he created all things, including spiritual beings, some of whom rebelled against him. And so they vie for worship from human beings because that increases their power and their ability to influence the world in ways that they want. And yes, I do believe God is permitting those things to happen.
Okay, but so in your view, if someone is not doing that, like be a Wiccan or something like that, out of spite or to harm someone, but just to try to be their best self, is to try to help people, those people are not going to help for you. Because even if people are
Well,
not
they
going,
need to. Yeah.
yeah, sorry, please
Well, I mean,
explain.
they need to turn away from that practice. So I'm not saying it's okay to be Wiccan. I'm saying even if you're doing it and you're innocently doing it and you think that it's the right thing, well, it's actually not, and you should stop because you're actually messing with beings that really do want to harm you. So it's a harmful practice, and so I'm not going to say, oh yeah, it's okay to be a Wiccan. No, it's not. But I'm not saying that God is the story isn't over yet. Let's put it that way. All your friends who are doing that stuff, the story isn't over yet. God loves them. God sees their heart. God knows why they're doing what they're doing, and God desires them to come into his kingdom. So, what do I believe about them? I believe that God is going to do everything possible to save them and to bring them into his kingdom. And so, if they truly are doing it from good motivations, then I believe that they will eventually find the truth.
Okay, I do disagree with that, because if you take population like Japanese, Hindus, those people are living entire lives, generation after generation, maybe without even hearing the message of God. It's
Yeah.
not even a choice for them.
Mm-hmm.
So if those people are going to hell, even if not for eternity, it's wrong. Sorry,
Well,
but I cannot say a point
but
there.
Luca, but I think you're putting an unnecessary limitation on God, right? Because you don't know what God is going to do for that person. You don't know how God has been speaking to that person throughout his life. If you care about those people, like if you care about those people in Japan and the fact that they haven't heard about the message, if you think that's unfair, how much more does the creator who loves them, the God who is justice, who is goodness, how much more does he care? And so, Jesus made a lot of promises to people. He said, blessed are the poor, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Most of the poor who have ever lived, they never heard the good news about Jesus. So does that mean that God isn't going to keep his promise to the poor? God has ways of reaching people. And so I don't limit what God is doing for people. I believe in his love and power. I believe in his goodness. And I'm not worried about those people in Japan. I want them to hear the truth about Jesus so they can know him right now and be saved now. But, I'm not limiting God for them or for your friends.
But my point is, there are entire generation of people that
Yeah.
lived and died. It's not like they can change. They already died. Entire
Yeah.
generation. And you said that those things that they believe, and I think that just our brains.
Yeah.
But you think that those things are real. So those things have deceived a whole bunch of people. We are
Yeah.
talking about billions.
Yeah.
And those people, they are not changing because they are already dead.
Mm.
Those people are in hell because they do not add any chance to the other voice.
Well, see, and I'm not saying they are in hell. I believe what's called inclusivism, right? That everyone needs to be saved through Jesus, but Jesus can save people even if they have not received the knowledge about his salvation. So it's like this. Imagine you're like swimming across the ocean. You're never going to make it to the other side. You pass out in the water, and then a rescue boat comes and grabs you. You're unconscious. You don't even know you've been rescued. You needed to be rescued, and every human being needs to be rescued. But Jesus can rescue people even when they are not realizing that he is the way that they're being rescued. So, you know, I have hope for those generations. I think God cares about those generations so much more than you do. So I believe in the power of Jesus' salvation that extends beyond just a few select people who got to have the correct information about him. And and I think Jesus talks about this because remember when Jesus, he said, when I'm seated on the glorious throne, I'm going to call all the nations together, all the nations, not just the Christians. He said, I'm calling all the nations together and I'm going to separate them like sheep from goats. And the sheep, he's going to welcome into his kingdom. He's going to say, welcome into my kingdom, you who are blessed by the Father, because when I was hungry, you gave me something to eat. When I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. When I was a stranger, you invited me in. When I was sick, when I was in prison, you visited me. And the sheep are going to say to Jesus, when did we do that for you, Lord? And he's going to say, whatever you did to the least of these, you did it for me. So this tells me that God isn't just looking at who has the right information about Jesus. He is looking at what is going on in the person's life. That is showing whose allegiance, that who has the true allegiance of that person. And there are many people who are serving Jesus and they don't realize that they're serving Jesus. All those generations that you talked about, those people loving their families, loving strangers, loving the poor, caring for people, those people are showing that their allegiance is with God's kingdom, with God's power, with God's desire for us to love each other. So they were showing who they belonged to by what they did. So this is how Jesus is going to judge the nations. It's not going to be just, did you get the right information?
Can I ask you something?
Mm-hmm.
Because we are talking about for quite some times now.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that I was lying when I said to you that I was not afraid of hell and I'm not a believer?
No.
Okay. So, if it's possible to someone like me, and for a lot of Christians, it's not possible to have an atheist be honest about this. Because I did have quite some experience, and those experiences were not aligned with God. Not all of them, at least, because the angel part, okay. So someone like me that after all these things, all this experience, just say, okay, that's all. I no longer believe in anything. I did very different experience, and maybe, as you said, came from different entities. And at this point, I'm just okay. I just don't believe. I cannot see that as a choice because I not believe. I do not believe. It's not a choice. So God in all of that, what is doing? Because He is permitting, as you said, to these other entities to give me basically experience. And after that, I'm just okay. I do not trust my brain, my experience in those instances to believe in any God. I'm just okay. That's over. So, what will be of me?
Yeah. Well, Luca,
Because I'm honest, I do not believe in
yeah.
God.
Yeah. Well, first, I want to go back to your comment about you saw the angel and that doesn't fit in with God. I think that was
No, no, no.
fantastic.
My comment was that one, okay, can fit
Okay.
with God, but the other one, no.
Okay.
So, as you said,
Yeah.
they were sent by other entities,
Yeah.
okay, but then people can get pretty much confused. In my case,
Yeah.
I just said, okay, that's just my brain. Those are real experience to me, okay,
Yeah.
but they are inside my brain,
Yeah.
and
Well,
that's all.
I'm not in the place of God to say what is going on with you or how God is going to judge you in particular, right? But
Yeah.
I hope that you won't let a few confusing experiences stop you from continuing to pursue God. Because even if, let's just suppose right now, God is not going to judge you for the way that you're thinking. Let's just suppose that. But still, right now, in the state that you're in, you are um, you're not in fellowship with God, right? You're not getting to enjoy God's presence. You so you're missing out in that way. You're missing out. You're actually contributing to leading other people away from the truth, right? If you don't continue to pursue God, if God is real, if Jesus is the truth, then people aren't getting to experience that through your life, right? So it's a big deal to just sit back and say, well, it's some confusing stuff happened, therefore I'm not going to believe.
Well,
Oh,
but I do not longer believe it. Once you do not believe anymore, you
yeah.
don't believe anymore. I cannot lie to you and say, yeah, God's confused me. I do not longer believe in a
Yeah.
God. So no one confused me.
Yeah.
Did
Kim
you
is
get it?
saying he wants to be honest. Should he not be honest? Now, I'm not saying don't be honest. I'm saying keep seeking because,
I will, but
yeah.
at this point, I need more evidence than even if an angel comes down to me. How can I tell that's not just my brain? You need to prove it to me. I need to see it, and it need to be more of one time and to be um, testable to convince me, because I can see everything. I can do LSD tomorrow and see dragons. It's not that they are real. I need something more. I'm a chemist. If you do chemistry, you can do an experiment over and over. I can tell you how to do it, and you will get my same results.
Mhm.
With God, angels, and things like that, it's all personal experience, and personal experience are in our brain. Even if there is something more, I cannot exclude that. But even if it's real, until they just gave us those experience and we cannot reproduce them, we do not have evidence, because evidence, it's like chemistry. If I do a reaction, I can tell you how to do it, and you will do the same and get the same results as everyone in chat. You cannot do that with personal experience. You can see an
I
angel,
agree.
you can see everything, and you cannot say, do that and that and that, and you will have the same experience. If you are in communion with God, if you can talk with God, you would be able to tell me something that just I could know. Because if a being is there, it can give you knowledge to show me wrong right now. How many people are there? How many people will change their mind if that entity just told you something about me? Just think about it. Every debate on the topic of evolution or things like that, a god could demolish those people without even needing a miracle. You just need to inspire people, and it's not what it's happening. Can you understand that? That's
Yeah.
evidence.
Mm. Yeah. Well, God isn't telling me anything about you right now. So I can't offer that.
Yes, I know. Don't worry about it. But it's my point. If God wants to have His message spread out, first of
Yeah.
all, He chose the worst time ever to do so, 2,000 years ago. Very, very bad choice. You do it now, you have Instagram, cell phones, cameras everywhere. Everyone can see, can record, and can show the proof of what are you doing. I will debate abiogenesis in a few hours. Just think about it.
I know
God
you
can
need to get a nap.
disprove things like that. Just create a rabbit from dust, and whole the science crumbles as soon you do something like that. You don't even need to create a rabbit. You just need to create some protista or things like that from uh, rocks, and whole science will crumble just like that.
Well, see, Luca, I don't think that's true. I think if that suddenly happened, you know, people would say, "Wow, look, evolution is capable of so much more than we
No,
thought it was."
if
So
you get two rocks to protista like that, that's just magic, and everyone would lose their mind. Scientists first, because if God is real, if the Noah's Ark is real, all those things are real, the first people that want to know and want to investigate that are scientists. It will be very, very excited to look at the Ark of Noah. Just think about it. All science that we know, it's wrong. We have to rewrite everything. That will be epic. Every scientist would love to do something like that.
Bob says, what do you think of doing something like this with me? I know I sort of told my story on the Atheist Confession stream, but I could give more detail. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it was
Send me
fun.
an
For
email.
me, it
Yeah.
was fun.
Yeah. Thank you so much for talking, Luca. And for those who were here at the beginning, Luca is going to be debating abiogenesis in a few hours. So check out that stream.
That
I'm
would
putting
be
the link in the chat right now, but it's also in the video description if you guys want to watch it. And Luca, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
to me too. It was really a pleasure, Rebecca. So
Okay.
I really happy to be here. Anytime, if you want to talk with me, you have my mail, so don't worry about it.
All right. We'll do it again. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Bye.